Black. You have 8 minutes.
And I'd like to welcome the Minister to the Chamber to discuss this report. I'd also like to say congratulations on your new post, Minister. A huge amount of work and consultation went into it, and I'm delighted to see it before the House. I'd also like to commend Senator Neil Richmond for his work chairing the committee. And a special thanks to the many organisations and individuals who shared their time and expertise with us over the past months. It was a huge help for our work, and a very special thank you to the clerk and all of the committee staff. The report itself is diverse, offering over 100 potential solutions across a huge number of fields. And one of my key priorities was ensuring that the focus wasn't solely economic. The impact Brexit can have in terms of trade and investment has been very well documented, and many researchers have outlined just how big a shock it can be. It's very important that we're prepared, but trade isn't the only issue here. I don't think areas like environmental protection had gotten enough attention previously, so I'm delighted that they're included so strongly here. I mentioned it briefly, but something I'm very passionate and adamant about is the need to avoid a hard border. This is absolutely vital. CSO data show that about 15,000 people across the border every single day, and we have to make sure this isn't disrupted. We're talking about people's lives here, relationships, businesses, and everything else that depends on going from north to south easily, or vice versa. We need to look at a special status for Northern Ireland and make avoiding a hard border a key part of the negotiations. I think it goes without saying in all of this that we have to make sure the provisions of the Good Friday Agreement are always respected. The Good Friday Agreement has been the bedrock of peace, stability and reconciliation in the north of Ireland, and any final Brexit deals needs to be mindful of this. In terms of cross-border cooperation, many community groups came forward with big concerns that after Brexit, regulations and protections might end up out of sync on either side of the border. We can't allow this to happen. It's vital that we maintain common standards and approaches across the entire island in key areas like environmental protection, healthcare, education and human rights. This is particularly clear when it comes to the environment. It seems very possible that the UK may no longer be bound by key EU environmental directives post-Brexit, and this has caused a great degree of uncertainty. Environmental issues by their nature transcend borders, and there's a big overlap on issues like biodiversity, waterways and air quality. We need a coordinated, consistent approach across the whole island, treating it as a single biogeographic unit and realising that our rivers run across borders. British Prime Minister Theresa May has said the UK will remain a leading actor on climate change, and we have to make sure this means no slipping in standards. Similarly, this all-island approach must be taken for human rights protection too. If the UK withdraws from the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights or the European Convention on Human Rights, we have to ensure that they are not replaced with a Bill of Rights that's watered down and less far-reaching. We simply can't roll back on people's rights. Human rights protections must be equivalent on both sides of the border. This is outlined in the Good Friday Agreement, and we need to maintain it. As well as this, there are big concerns regarding the rights of EU citizens living in the UK, as well as UK citizens living throughout the EU. We have to be humane and empathetic to these people and their families during the negotiations. We can't play with people's lives and use them as bargaining chips. I urge both sides of the negotiations to remember this and make reciprocal rights a priority. In terms of education, it was clear during the hearings that so many opportunities, particularly for young people, are being jeopardised by Brexit. We heard in the committee that students from the north may be excluded from programmes like Erasmus, or could end up needing to pay tuition fees of up to $20,000 to attend Irish universities. They may no longer be eligible for key maintenance grants from SUSI, which offers vital support in getting lower income families into higher education. These sort of changes can hugely affect people's lives and opportunities, and we need to oppose them. Similarly, we should try to maintain strong cross-border collaboration between Ireland and the UK in the area of scientific research. To date, researchers in Ireland have won €386 million in EU funding as part of a Horizon 2020, but this funding may suddenly be jeopardised post-Brexit. This is a perfect example of the types of projects that can be threatened by a hard Brexit. The reality is that EU funding has been vital for many community services and initiatives in the north of Ireland, and we can't let these projects just fall away once the UK leaves the EU. This is particularly clear in an area I'm particularly passionate, and I know you're passionate too, Minister, in the area of mental health services, which is an issue that's very close to my heart. As it stands, the EU-funded Peace Programme has provided over €2.2 billion for cross-border projects on education, young people, shared spaces and relationship building. This has played a hugely important role in addressing the trauma and legacy mental health issues that have remained as a result of the conflict. Unless they are properly addressed, these issues can be long-standing and do untold damage to families and communities. And if it's okay, I'd like to highlight some specific figures here, as it really brings home the reality of what Brexit might mean for so many people. As part of the Peace 3 round of funding, 6,990 people received trauma counselling, 190,000 people attended events addressing sectarianism, racism or conflict resolution. 45,000 people attended events directly assisting victims and survivors. 25,000 people attended over 2,000 conflict resolution workshops. Almost 3,000 people attended initiatives addressing physical and non-physical barriers to properly dealing with the past. Any public expenditure cuts will impact existing high levels of debt, unemployment, poor mental health and suicide. It is essential that the work of supporting and empowering victims and survivors of the conflict continues to grow as individuals begin to address unresolved trauma. Despite the formal end of the conflict in the north, a substantial proportion of the adult population continue to suffer the adverse mental health effects of chronic trauma exposure. It is likely that the legacy of ill mental health associated with the conflict, if not adequately addressed, will endure for many years. We simply cannot have a situation where those cross-border community building initiatives fall away because EU funding is withdrawn. We have to ensure that these projects are maintained.
Just finished. Next is